Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and on this stream we work on a Django app, and I walk you through the process of building something from start to finish. All the code for this stream and this project is streamed live online, so you can watch the entire process of getting an application out into the world. SaaS is software as a service if you're not familiar with it, and it's the idea of putting software on the internet, making it available for somebody to pay for it. So we're working on a journaling service that will send journal prompting via email as the primary interface. And we're going to continue on that project tonight. This is part 10 of that stream. So hopefully you'll join in. You're welcome to ask me anything about Python, Django, or web development. That's what I'm here for. Blah, blah, welcome back. Good to see you again. Let me answer your question in just a second. We're going to get focused today on SendGrid. So last couple of weeks I've been focusing on how do we get this service live and deployed out to a site, and so we can actually, even in a very basic form, start using it and adding to it. But there's some core features that I wanted to be available before I did that, and SendGrid is one of those things. So we're going to focus on our attention on that this evening. Blah, blah, your question about is, do I have any knowledge or advice about how we can make a PWA from Django server-side rendered app? Well, that's an interesting question. So PWA, if you are not familiar with those that aren't, it stands for Progressive Web App, I believe. And the idea with a progressive web app is that you provide more features based on what's available to the user. It progresses. And that can be very limited down to that the very extreme end is someone who has even turned off JavaScript on their web browser and just wants plain HTML pages, all the way up to someone with notifications on and all the fancy, there's a ton of JavaScript APIs that are available now in the web. So there's lots of enrichment that you can do at various levels. So it's sort of a spectrum of that. And so a progressive web app is the idea that you want to build something that adapts to each of those layers and continues to provide a user experience that is usable, maybe not as full-featured as one end of the spectrum, but still the basics can be provided. So to answer your question, blah, blah, I don't have a ton of experience with PWAs. My go-to, and specifically in the context of Django server-side apps, or just in any context really, I think I default primarily to assuming that people have JavaScript enabled, so I don't try and design my systems to think about a world without JavaScript. And then most of the features that I've wanted to use for my apps have not been so involved that they've required a lot of those extra features. So I don't know that I have a lot of advice to offer in this area. I'm sorry that I'm not a wealth of knowledge on this particular front. But I have seen there are tools out there that you could reach for if you want to do that. And I want to say the people behind Ruby on Rails, so that's Basecamp, they've got a framework called Hotwire. It's a JavaScript framework. And I believe this helps with the idea of building rich PWA applications. So this might be a technology to look into if you're interested in it. I confess it's been a long while since I looked at this. I think part of the way it works is by using WebSockets, and that's the idea. So like a WebSocket is not a feature that everybody has accessible to them. So one of the progressive aspects is whether or not you have WebSockets to use. And I think if it doesn't have that, it can kind of fall back to a standard page load, page render. But if it does have those features, that it can kind of upgrade the experience and provide sending fewer bytes over the wire so that there's a faster response time and more dynamic loading, and there's not page refreshes and all that sort of stuff. So that might be a project to check out. And it might give you, just by having this thing to look at, this page to look at, you might get inspiration for other tools that are in the same vein. that might help out in that way. So there you go. That's about as much as I can offer on it today, unfortunately. Let's get back to the SendGrid stuff, though. Thank you for the question. Appreciate that, blah, blah. Hopefully that was at least somewhat useful. So framing this application, the application I'm building is called Journey Inbox. If you've never been on the stream before or never viewed this on YouTube, there's a recording later. And it is about providing a service that exists on the internet. And this is sort of the architecture of how this is going to work. We're going to deploy to Heroku. We're going to use the Heroku scheduler to do sending of emails. And SendGrid is the service we're going to use that will actually send emails to and from people's inboxes in whatever email client they're using. And SendGrid will then send responses back to us via the internet, which will hit our application, and then we'll be able to process those emails and store the journal entries. That's the core loop that's going in this process. Right now, what we have so far is we have this Django management or this job over here that is actually sending the email. So we have this arrow that's going to SendGrid. And we've done some configuration that it's supposed to be like an API key, but we haven't tested that out. So there's like some uncertainty here if this is actually working the way we expect it to. And there's this additional element of, we don't have to worry about these parts. This is something that SendGrid takes care of, is actual doing the sending. So assuming you've sent it to valid recipients, SendGrid should be able to deliver those emails. And then we also have not configured this flow back when SendGrid wants to send, when SendGrid receives a response from somebody with their email, they want to be able to send a webhook or call a webhook where they send you the data, and that data will say basically, here's what the email response was, so you can process that in whatever way you want. So where I want to get to today, and if we're successful by this evening, we'll have at least tested out this path. Maybe we can start there to see if the sending, if we're connecting to SendGrid properly at all, and then smooth out whatever configuration might be wrong there. It's a little bit of an awkward situation because I'll be running this from my local machine. So there's a possibility that that won't work well, but I think it should. SendGrid should not care where you're sending it from. You're using their API, and it goes against your quota, so that's not really their perspective. Now, there might be aspects of the trust relationship that are not established that we need to go through, but we can work through that, and I can explain what that means. Assuming we can get that portion done, then we'll actually work on the webhook stuff. The webhook functionality is provided by the email tool we're using called Django AnyMail. So it supports receiving of mails, and we can hook that up. So let's go through and start with that first basic goal of, can we send an email? So let's think through this, what we need to do. I've got my code up over here, and make sure we pulled from the latest. And I guess one more thing we should do, there was a pull request here, and I told you that I want to do all code changes here, so let's just knock this out pretty quickly. This is pre-commit, has upgraded some stuff. They already ran it, so there's nothing to do here. I'm not even going to go into it. Just know that these are some automatic updates that we get the benefit of having. So I'm going to merge that and then pull that code. So now we're up to date with everything that is going on with the system. Okay, we're at a point now where we can try and test this out. And how, I guess the question becomes, how can we test this out? So we've got our job that is doing the sending of email. And the idea with the job is, if you have an active account, which we're doing with this query right now, so we're getting all the active accounts, and then we're going to loop over them and send out an email with the send mail interface that Django provides. Sam, you don't get the SendGrid part. If you can expand on what you don't understand at the moment, if I need to explain more, I'm happy to. But the short version is that SendGrid is considered an email service provider. So what they do is, in the long time ago in the past, the way you would send email is you would set up an email server, and email speaks over a specific protocol called SMTP. There's a couple protocols, but the delivery of email is like well known. It's a standard, And you could set up that server and have a web application send data to it, and then that email server would then translate whatever data it received and send it out to its destination. And it would use this SMTP protocol and eventually end up at somebody's inbox in their email client. That is something that people just don't typically do anymore. And the reasons is it turns out that email is a pretty hard problem because of spam and a bunch of other stuff. And well, it's actually mostly because of spam. Because the idea is, if you set up your email server, we don't know that, we being people on the internet, don't know if you're a spammer or not. So your emails are going to have a hard time getting through spam filters because you're not a trusted sender of emails. And building up that trust is something that takes time. So enter stage left or stage right. I'm not a theater person, so I don't even know which one's which. The email service providers come in and offer an API, like a programmatic API that says, okay, we'll do the email sending for you. We will become a reputable company that people can trust, that the emails that are sent by us are, we're a reputable sender, and we have terms of service that make sure we don't support spammers in our system. So that's an ESP. There are many of them. SendGrid is one such example. So what they provide then is an API that we call. And we call the API, we send them the data that we want to send out an email, and then they do the SMTP work and actually send the email out to the different email recipients. And so the actual work of email processing is removed from us because that's what SendGrid's job is. We've integrated with an extension package for Django that's called AnyMail that is designed to hook Django's mail sending interface, which is this part right here, Django core mail, and the send mail call that you see right here. That's all part of Django. And Django, just like it has many backends that it can support for ORMs or for templates or a variety of things, user authentication, all of these things are configurable. Email's the same way. So you can set up different email backends. And the AnyMail backend is designed to support many of these email service providers. So we configure AnyMail to talk to SendGrid and provide the credentials that SendGrid expects. And so it does the translation. So we're using the Django mail interface to talk to AnyMail, which uses its interface to talk to SendGrid via the API, which then is using their own stuff to talk SMTP to finally arrive at the user's inbox way on the other side. So I guess I get your point that you don't get the SendGrid part. There's a lot of layers to that. Hopefully that clears some of that stuff up. And conversely, coming back, it's not quite the same path, because sending out means we want to talk to SendGrid and say, SendGrid, go send this. But how does SendGrid talk back to us? It doesn't know where this Heroku worker, where the job will be actually running, is. So it wants to send back data. So what we do on the side of the application is we set up a webhook, which is essentially a receiver that SendGrid can call. So when SendGrid receives an email from somebody's client, somebody hits the send button on an email, it comes to them and they say, oh, this email was sent to Journey Inbox, which is our domain name for this service. And then they're able to know that it's associated with my account within SendGrid. And then I can configure within my account, anytime you get an email, send the data to this particular webhook, which we will configure. At that point, they can send the email data into this webhook. The webhook is set there to listen on the internet and receive these things. And then we can do the processing of those emails. So that's the whole loop. Hopefully that makes some sense. If it doesn't, and you still don't get parts of it, please let me know and I'll try and clear it up as best I can. But that's the short version of this, or short as I think I can make it. Okay, let's look at where we're at and see how we can get this tested. So we've got settings, Let me look at your question, blah, blah. Can we use new async features of Django just for sending email without, my little area for reading the text is like covered up with an emoji now. Without third party, can we use async features without third party? I don't know, because we need to trigger this email sending on a timer. We need to be able to send every day. So it's not like we're receiving some request and then sending an email from that. So I'm not sure how async features of Django could help that way. Maybe you have some other thought there that I'm not thinking of. You're only using, Sam, you say you're only using the regular Django email. What does that mean? How did you configure emails? Are you doing an SMTP? Maybe you have access to an SMTP server and it's working for you. In which case, cool, good for you. I am not going to set up an SMTP server for my situation, so I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Okay, so looking at, whoops, that's the chat window. Looking at over here in our settings, we get down to the AnyMail area, and you can see that we've hooked up this SendGrid API key, and that's going to be all that AnyMail technically needs in order to send API requests to do an email send. So if we run this job, in theory, if we have an active account, and it has an active API key, we could actually send to the proper API. So currently in my .env file, which still has no secrets, so I can still show this, no really important secrets, I should say. You can see right here that in our test mode, we're using the email backend of the console. So I could use that and call this job, and what you would see is the actual email message in all of the format that would normally go over SMTP dumped out on my terminal so that you could know exactly what that content was supposed to be. That's not what we want to test though. We want to test the actual AnyMail stuff. So one way that we could do this is that back to the settings file, you can see that the default for email backend is actually the SendGrid email backend that comes with AnyMail. So if we turn this off by doing that, then we're going to be using the real SendGrid email backend. And then we don't have a reply to yet, or we don't actually know or know if SendGrid even cares of what this reply to is right now. This is going to be a fake. This isn't a real address, and one of the things that I'm uncertain about this process is how do we tell SendGrid that this is a domain that we care about? Like, is there configuration there? So we might need to, and we should actually, check on the specific ESP and see if they have extra settings that we should be doing aside from the API key, because there might be work on, there's certainly work on the Django side of the API key that we had to provide, but is there extra configuration that we need to provide to SendGrid on their side to make sure that our sender is valid and all of that stuff? So let's look at the configuration stuff here and check it out. So this is how it's actually sending it. So it does API calls to actually do that content sending. And if your SendGrid messages aren't being delivered as expected, be sure to look for drop events in your activity feed. So they give us a place to look if it's not behaving as we would expect. Then we've got that email backend set like we want. We've got the API key set like we want. So that's good. Whether AnyMail, so SendGrid generate message ID. Whether AnyMail should generate a UUID for each message sent through SendGrid to facilitate status tracking. The UUID is attached to the message as a SendGrid custom argument. named AnyMail ID and made available as any. Yeah, we talked about this like last week, about there's this extra AnyMail status thing that can be added. So if we wanted to, we could track message ID this way. I don't know that we're going to do that right away. I'm more interested in getting SendGrid working first, and then we can worry about extra tracking stuff later. And it's telling us it's defaulting to this. So we're getting this kind of for free. We just have to use it later when we want. SendGrid merge field format. I don't know what this is about. I don't think we care right now because we're not doing anything legacy here. So I'm not sure if that matters. We can control the API URL, but we're not going to because we want them to send the API to the v3. I don't know why I'd change that. And then we've got this extra. To use SendGrid features not directly supported, you got ESP extra. Okay, so if we want extra stuff that SendGrid describes, we can put this in there. Let's read their limitations and quirks section. SendGrid does not return any sort of unique ID from its send API call. Knowing a sent message's ID can be important for later queries about the message's status. Oh, okay. So SendGrid doesn't put the ID, but you can attach the ID to it and then maybe get it later as like extra metadata that you've added. Jeffrey, welcome, by the way. And we are working on SendGrid configuration tonight. So I walked through the diagram. We're going to confirm our outbound stuff. And then we're going to, if we have time, once we've confirmed that outbound is working, we're going to work on the inbound stuff with webhooks. That's the plan. Thanks for the question. And right now we're staring at SendGrid documentation to make sure that I've configured everything properly. Okay, so limitations, we've got this message ID problem, but it looks like by default we're working around that because of that generate message ID thing. So we'll have to pull from this if we want to use that later and reference it. And then we'll have to figure out, it'll be interesting to see on the, what I don't know about this process is what the webhook payload looks like and how we can then correlate message IDs, because that's going to be really handy, I think, for tracking sending stuff. Okay, let's look here. We've got invalid addresses. SendGrid will accept and send just about anything as a messages from email. Okay, so that's cool. So we could be putting something bogus in there, which is what we're going to have with our test data, and hopefully not get blocked by that. Wrong character set. I don't know if this is going to get us, but we'll see. And I definitely don't care about AMP. No envelope sender overrides. What does that mean? SendGrid does not support overriding envelope sender on individual messages. I'm not even sure what that means. We'll maybe get to that when we get to it. Let's open that up as a thing we can go read about. Set this to a string email address that should be used as the message's envelope sender. If supported by your ESP, this will become the return path in the recipient's mailbox. Huh. Okay. We might need that because I don't know for sure. But remember, when we set this up, we're going to need to be able to tell. We more than the standard no reply that I've done on a lot of other services. We actually want them to be able to reply. That's like key to this whole app. So we need to be able to have a valid from address that is actually going to go back to SendGrid. And that's what I want us to check on along the way. But I don't think we have to worry about it yet. We have to worry about it when we set up the webhook to test the full end-to-end of the process. Batch sending, I don't think we're doing batch sending in this case. Because it's not just like each message is unique because it's going to remember, or maybe you don't if you haven't been on the stream before. each message will include a previous journal entry. That's part of what makes this service valuable, is you get to see past entries and be reminded of what you were about. So we definitely can't do a batch entry where we make one email and send to it a bunch of people, because we can't send personal journal entries to a large list. That doesn't make any sense. So I don't think this section is appropriate. And I don't think we're working with anything legacy, because we have not used SendGrid on this app before. I don't know that we have to do anything with on-the-fly templates, because we're using our own template. We're having Django render the content and then putting out the raw bytes on there, so I don't think that matters. And this might be important. Let's read this section. Status tracking webhooks. Oh, status tracking. No, I don't care if somebody opened it or not. That's not of interest to me, so I would say no. Okay, this does sound important though. Inbound webhook, that's the coming back path. This is definitely relevant. If you want to receive email from SendGrid through AnyMail's normalized inbound handling, follow SendGrid's inbound parse webhook guide, okay, and set up AnyMail's inbound webhook. The destination URL setting will be AnyMail webhook secret. Okay, we got to set that up later. Then our site, AnyMail SendGrid inbound. Okay. That doesn't sound too hard. You should enable SendGrid's post the raw full MIME message checkbox. And be sure the URL has a trailing slash. Yep. If you want to use AnyMail's normalized spam detected and spam score attributes, I don't know that I do. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. We'll see. Let's read this note. AnyMail supports either options for SendGrid's post the raw full message MIME full message checkbox, but enabling the setting is preferred to get the most accurate representation of any received email. Using raw MIME also avoids a limitation in Django's multi-part form data handling that can strip attachments with certain file names. Okay, so my service is not going to deal with attachments. That's not a planned feature. So I don't know that I care about that note about the limitation, because if somebody attaches something, I'm just going to ignore it. I don't know what would happen. But most accurate representation, we'll see. I guess we'll play around with all these things. So there's a bunch of options here, and I'm reading this as someone like, you need to know I'm not some kind of SendGrid pro, and I've actually never done this kind of loop going back and forth. So hopefully the experience is pretty raw of this is like me thinking on this for the first time. But reading through all of this, I didn't see anything that would convince me that we have to do anything on the SendGrid side aside from getting the API key. So let's go do that. So let's do a couple things. I'm going to set up a test account on my local environment that is an active account. And I'm going to put my actual email in there. And I'm going to turn on secret mode because I don't want to share that on stream. But I'm going to put it so that I can actually use my phone and hopefully see an email come in. And we'll also put the actual API key in there. And we'll just put this in there just to test things out. And then once I'm done, I can take those attributes out and not worry about sending me junk from my dev set environment anymore. And that will give me confidence that if I've got it working locally, then I can have a pretty high degree of confidence that when I finally do deploy this to Heroku, that it should work similarly, assuming I get the same configuration going. So if you have any questions about that test plan, let me know. Hopefully it was pretty clear. Okay, so let's start by setting up the local account. And I only want to I have a very low number of API calls that I can even make on the free tier. I want to say it's like 10, so we might only have 10 shots at this. So let's try and get everything get a pretty high confidence before we hit the send button. So we've got the local web server fired up, and we're going to go to port 5000 and go to the admin section, which I will probably change the name before I deploy this live. I might make that configurable via a setting so that's just not obvious to the whole world where my admin is. And that's something that I can bookmark on my own kind of thing later. So we're going to come into the accounts area, and we have one account object. It's associated with Matt, and it's for trialing. Now, trialing is one of our active states in our account. Go to the account system and look at the model. We can see that there's a few statuses that are here. And we've got an active status of trialing, active, or exempt, which is going to be me in the future. Jeffrey, to do this test, I am not going to use built-in testing. I'm actually going to run. This is meant to be more of an integration test, not one of my automated tests that I'll run regularly. So it's meant to confirm configuration. And because of that, what I'm going to do is make sure all of the data is configured locally for this dev setup, and then call the job execution command that we've run in the past that didn't go anywhere because it was hooked up to the console. So that's the plan. So by having it in the trialing state, it should show up as an active thing. So we don't actually need to change the account. What I do need to change, or what I need to make sure I get properly, is the email. So we're using the account user email. I'm going to come in here, and I've got matt@testing.com right now. That's not going to be valid. So now I have to put on my secrets and obscure this, because I'm going to plug in my real email. Although if you know where to look on the internet, you'll find my real email address. It's not super hidden in the world, but I don't want to make it trivially easy to get it. So all I'm doing here while you can't see me is putting in a real email address that should come back to me. And that's now plugged in. So I can come back here for a moment. So we have our real email is plugged into that active account. We also have configured the this env file. Django developer, welcome. Not sure I've seen you around before, but glad you're here. If you have any questions, let me know. We're working on SendGrid configuration this evening. Okay, so we're going to use the email backend because we've commented out this line on the env file, and we've got our account configured. So the only thing really left for us, I believe, should be to get the proper SendGrid API key. That's down in the email configuration at the bottom here. We've got right there, SendGrid API key. So currently we're doing this fake API key, which I'm going to comment out for the moment so that we can restore that later. And then I'm going to drop the real API key here. So I got to come over here, and looks like my 1Password stuff is locked. So I'm going to go back to the secrets mode for a moment, unlock some stuff, get logged into SendGrid, and then get the API key. I will continue talking through this if I can stay focused on accessing my account things. And so at the moment, I'm going into the login process on SendGrid, and I'm doing the login page, which I need to verify what the account is, yada yada. Okay, so I'm logging in. I've got some two-factor stuff that I've got to plug in, which I think, let me dig that up. Glad I have my phone with me. There it is. And then I need to plug in a number here. Sorry, I know this part is not super interesting, listening to me talk through login, but it's a necessary step in order to get the API key. Okay, so I've plugged in my two-factor. Now I need to go, I believe I need to go, so here, I can show this piece before, hold on, let me assess. Is there any sensitive information on this page? No. Well, let's bring this back up just so you can see it for a moment. So I've logged in, and this app, the reason why there are 4 requests here, in case you're curious, is this is SendGrid will only, their terms of service only permit me to associate one account, and one account with per email address. And I haven't set up a whole like Google domain for this business or anything. So it's going through my main email account, the very thing that I am trying to send an email to. And these 4 requests, excuse me, they're for my other service, the school desk service, which has a process that's similar to Journey Inbox, which requires that you confirm an email address and sends out an email. So this must be people who have found a school desk and have logged in there to try and use that, which is why there are 4 of them. Which might mean that we have even fewer requests available to us today, because it looks like 2 of them, well, those were yesterday, so we might be okay. Django developer, this is a new project. This is a journaling service that is meant to work through email, which is why we're working on SendGrid. And I don't have any plans to integrate Celery. I'm using a basic Heroku scheduler feature that is essentially a glorified cron job that will send out emails on a nightly basis, is the plan right now. All right, so I think I need to come over here and click settings, most likely, to find the API key. So I'm gonna have to put it back on the secrets mode for a moment. And I promise I need to get a better secrets screen. I just have it be a very boring black thing, black screen at the moment, and that's not very exciting. But it's functional, but not very exciting. So how do I copy this? So I went to the settings page. Yeah, cron still gets the job done. You're exactly right, Jeffrey. I'm on my settings page, and I need to get my API key. So I'm reading through some stuff. Sorry, y'all. It's doesn't make it obvious like what the API key is. There's an API key identifier, which is not the API key itself. And it even has little pop-ups that says, the API key ID is how you reference this key when editing or deleting it through the API. It is not the actual API key itself. And then it has API key, and it shows a little lock that says we do not allow the key value to be displayed. So I think what I need to do is actually create a new API key in order, and it's probably going to be one of these things where they let me see it like one time, and I got to put it somewhere and store it, and knowing that I will lose it in the future if I don't. So, okay. I can't show my screen right now, unfortunately, because part of it is showing my production API key ID for the other project in the background. But when I clicked the Create API Key button, it created a little popover, and it's got it's asking me to fill something in, and it says API key name. So I'm going to put in, I'm going to call this Journey Inbox Test. I'm actually probably going to create a new API key when I go actually to production, but just in case I lose this one, I don't want to have to mess around with a bunch of keys. So then there are some permission fields underneath that. It says API key permissions, and there's a tooltip for that. It says set the level of access you give to each API key, and it gives me 3 options. So there's full access, and that allows the API key to access get, patch, put, delete, and post endpoints. There's restricted access, that customized level of access for all parts of your account, excluding billing and email validation. And then there's billing access. once I click on, if I click on the restricted access, it's a bunch of options. You know what? Let me find a way to do this. I'm gonna move half of my window over because I'm tired of like describing everything. I'm gonna bring the scene back up. Okay, there's nothing sensitive on here. I mean, there is, but you can see I've got half of my browser off. So here we are. We're at this little popover thing, and we can do this full access. And anytime I see like full access, the little like spidey signal goes off of like, do I really want to do that? Because that is potentially scary, because it might open up the key to a lot of features. But maybe I'll just do that in this context, because here we're in a scenario where this is going to be a temporary key. Like I plan on deleting this key. I've called it Journey Inbox Test. We can test it out this evening, and I can get the value and do that. So I don't know what create and view is going to do. I don't know where it's going to put it. So let's hide this again. Sorry, y'all. I promise we won't have to do this too many more times, I hope. So I'm going to move the browser window back over. I'm going to put it in the right spot so it maximizes appropriately. And I'm clicking the create and view button. And it is saying API key created. Please copy this key and store it somewhere safe. For security reasons, we cannot show you this again. So I clicked it and it copied it to my clipboard. And now I'm going to paste it into my .env file. At this point, I need to close my .env file because I can't show you this anymore. And then I'm going to come back over here and say done, because I've copied it and stored it in some location. We're back to the API keys page, which is showing IDs that I don't want to share. And then I'm back now to the dashboard. Okay. I should be done with that portion of this exercise. So we are over here in the app. We have should have a valid API key plugged in. And I think we're ready to go. I think there's only one account that's going to go. And notice we didn't put any kind of reporting or printing of any sort into the job itself that runs. So we don't actually know if it'll just finish. And if it doesn't error, I guess, then it ran okay. But this is how I'm going to do it. So we've got our prompt. There's not going to be an entry. Well, there might be an entry for this user. We might have some test entries. And we've got the things that we're going to render, and we're ready to call the send mail interface. So let's try it. In order to try it, that would be a manage command, and I probably have it in not one of our check commands because that's things we ran last time. But here we are, run jobs daily. Let's see how this goes. So hitting enter. Okay, hopefully my email is not just on display in this process. Error occurred in job send mail. Okay. The SendGrid API response is a 403 forbidden. The from address does not match a verified sender identity. All right. Mail cannot be sent until this error is resolved. Visit sending email sender identity to see the sender identity requirements. Okay, so that's good news. That, I mean, at least it's sensible. It makes, so again, I can't show you the .env, but actually it's in the sample file. So if we go to the env example, currently what's in there right now is reply to at fakesendgrid.com, which is very sensible for SendGrid to say like, no, you can't do that. You can't. That's not allowed. So let's go back and go to the page and go to that error, that URL that's here. And let's open this thing, see what it says. So we're making progress, just progress via errors. Okay, sender identity. To ensure our customers, that's me, maintain the best possible sender reputations. So you want to have your reputation be good. Actually, that's actually one of the problems. One of the catalysts for creating the service is my email with my current service was starting to show up in spam, which tells me that something happened to their reputation where it was getting knocked down. Maybe their stuff got taken over, maybe they didn't set something up properly, but I was losing access to some of my emails, or I would only notice them later checking my spam folder, which is something I rarely do. So that's some of that motivation. So we definitely want to make sure that our reputation is good. And to uphold legitimate sending behavior. So that what they're probably mean there is you can't send email and say you're Google. You can't do a @google.com some kind of respond to thing and try and capture email that way. I don't even know how it would work, but they just want to make sure you're above board. We require customers to verify their sender identities. Okay. A sender identity represents your from email address. All right. The address your recipients will see as the sender of your emails. Cool. All makes sense so far. You can verify one or more sender identities using either domain authentication or single sender verification. I think this is probably the one we want to do. Because I think, yeah. Let's read about them. There are advantages to both verification methods, and we provide detailed guides to configure whichever option you choose. This page offers a high-level overview of single sender verification and domain authentication. That's interesting. They reverse the order there. They say domain here and single second. Bizarre. All right, let's look through them and see if I'm right about wanting domain authentication. Single sender verification is a fast way to verify your sender identity when you don't have access to the DNS settings for your domain. That is not true of me. I have access to my DNS settings. Though you will want to complete domain authentication for your production mail send. So we want to do this anyway. Single sender verification is a great way to start quickly while building a proof of concept or test. Okay, I know I said we're testing this, but I would love to get closer to deploying something online. So this doesn't sound like the path we want to go down, but let's read through the advantages and disadvantages to see what this method's about. Advantage is a quick method. Well, I'm not after quick, I'm after write in this case. And you can send from a single email address that you confirm ownership of by clicking a verification link. Okay. And it may be that we end up doing single sender verification if the domain one requires changes that we can't do in time. The DNS system takes time to propagate some changes, so it might be that we set up domain authentication, and then it doesn't work quickly enough to actually prove that it's there. And I don't want to sit around all evening waiting for that, because I think it can take, I don't know, 24 hours or something. It's not a short process. All right, so it's only recommended for testing, and you can only send from the address you verify rather than any address on an authenticated domain. All right, not a surprise. Domain authentication, please note you must have the ability to edit the DNS records. Again, I do have that ability. Domain authentication is the preferred method of verification. Okay. Well, it's saying a lot of the same stuff. Advantages. Authenticated domain improves mail deliverability, which we want, and a sender's reputation, which we want. Domain authentication is an industry best practice. Okay. And you can send from any email address on your authenticated domain. All right. Now, I'm going to open both of these again on the chance that we might need to do the single sender just because of time stuff on the stream. Don't have time to watch a tutorial video on stream, so we're not going to do that. Hopefully everything is here is not in the video. They're saying a lot of the same stuff. All reputable email delivery services providers. So this is their way of saying, please don't run away. You're going to have to do this no matter which signer you send up for. I'm guessing that's why this little block exists. Okay. This page guides you through domain authentication. If you're already familiar with DNS, you can want to skip to the setup. Well, I don't know if everybody's familiar with DNS here, so we'll read through some of the stuff, and you can understand some of it. So DNS is like typically, in the most basic form of it, is DNS is what will connect journeyinbox.com, my domain name, to Heroku's servers through a certain record kind. There's different. The DNS system, that's what the S stands for. Actually, it's listed right here. Is a storage. It's like a hierarchy of servers that talk to each other about names on the internet, and they understand different kinds of records, which are like little bits of information that they store about each domain. These different kinds of records have very precise semantics of what they are for, and they all have slightly different purposes. And they have boring names like CNAME or A record or alias. I think there's a handful of them. All right. So when sending email, you must set domain name system records on the domain to communicate to receiving email servers that you own the domain. Okay. So some email server is going to want to verify that we're the owners of the domain that is coming from the from. So everything after the @ sign. And we want to verify that verify that you have given the sending email server permission to send email on behalf of the domain. So we also need to tell everybody else that, hey, SendGrid represents us in this case, and it's okay if something is coming from them. So that's going to help. Domain authentication, formerly known as domain white label, is Twilio's SendGrid process for setting DNS entries that grant us permission to send email on your behalf. Once you've completed this, your recipients will no longer see via SendGrid. That's good. We don't want, I really don't want folks to have to know that SendGrid is doing the sending. So that's a good thing. And both receiving email servers and human recipients will be more likely to trust the legitimacy of your messages, which means you're more likely to reach an inbox than a spam folder. Good. Continuing, we've got our key terminology section. There are things we have to know about here. We've talked about DNS itself. That's the system. And it says, as I said, it's talking about records are essential to verifying which email servers are allowed to send email. DNS is a naming system. It resolved domains, which is humans, that like journeyinbox.com, that's a domain name. Typically that resolves to like an IP address, which is a number that's used in the network protocols that allow you to connect to those things. They're saying all of this. I should just continue reading. Good grief. As I noted, there are several types. There's an A record. There's a CNAME. These are things that I already said. There's a TXT. This is one of the ones that we're going to have to use most likely. So a TXT record allows a domain owner to store text information. So people can then, I think what you can do is then you can query a domain name and look up this information. So I've got my domain name from Cloudflare. Cloudflare then hosts a domain name server that will respond to requests. So domain names are like public things on the internet. Everybody can know about domain names. And so if I store some TXT records with my domain name, some other system could say, find journeyinbox.com, and there's a process of how it would get to Cloudflare, which I won't describe. And then Cloudflare's DNS server can say, here's the information that we have about this domain name, which will have settings that I've included. All right. So DNS records are managed by a DNS provider or host. That's Cloudflare. Oh, they even list it right here. And that's that section. Okay. When working with an email provider, you should be aware of two types of email authentication. Domain keys identified mail, DKIM, and sender policy framework, SPF. Okay. DKIM and SPF are both implemented in part by setting TXT records on your domain. All right, so we're going to have to set some attributes. DKIM is an authentication method that uses asymmetric encryption to sign and verify your email. All right, I'm not going to talk about asymmetric encryption. Interesting topic. You can go read about it. I'm not going to get into that. With DKIM implemented, the sending email server, which would be SendGrid, adds a cryptographic signature to your email's headers. All right. The DKIM record is a TXT record that stores the DKIM public key. All right, so essentially, SendGrid sends out an email, includes some extra data. A receiver on the other side can then go look at my domain and find a public bit of information and take the bit of data that SendGrid has sent with my email along with the public information and do some encryption cryptography stuff to verify that they match up. And it's a verification method. That's what they mean by authentication. So a message coming from SendGrid is in fact from the domain that has the DKIM text record. Markydix, the SaaS means software as a service. So yeah, it's one of those. There's a bunch of phrases like this, software as a service. You might also encounter platform as a service, which would be so platform as a service, which is PaaS, P-A-A-S. Or you could encounter infrastructure as a service. That's IaaS. So infrastructure as a service is like AWS, Amazon web hosting stuff. That's infrastructure that's available. I realized I put too many A's in that comment on PaaS. Platform as a service is somebody who is not quite as low level as AWS and offers something up here. So like I'm going to deploy my website to Heroku. Heroku is a vendor that makes it easier to get your stuff on the internet. That's platform as a service. Software as a service is like a layer above that. Is an actual software product that people are trying to deliver. So hopefully that clears that up. All right, returning to this terminology here as we're getting to this configuration stuff. And I'm, to be honest, I've encountered these terms before, this DKIM and SPF. I don't remember what they do. So I'm kind of learning with you as I'm reading this out loud. Sender Policy Framework is an email authentication standard. Okay, that's another one. You're welcome, Marky. So it's an email authentication standard developed by AOL. Wow, so it's been around for a long time. That allows you to list all the IP addresses that are authorized to send email on behalf of your domain. Okay, so what this tells me right now, before we even configure anything, is that SendGrid is going to be able to give us some IP addresses that that we'll be able to plug into a TXT record that will do the SPF stuff. And that just confirms that they're allowed to do this sending. I don't know how the details of that work. That's interesting, but I guess we could go read more if we wanted to. That's about as deep as I want to go on the subject. The receiving server can compare the email sender's IP. Okay, so it's more stuff, more verification, kind of like DKIM. DKIM was about verifying text records. This is another layer that can verify at the IP network layer. That's okay. That's interesting stuff. All right, now we're getting to it. So Twilio's SendGrid DNS records. During domain authentication setup, Twilio SendGrid's automated security will be enabled by default. Great. If you leave automated security on, Twilio SendGrid will provide you with CNAME records that must be added to your domain. If you turn automated security off, which we won't do, I'm not going to worry about that part. So as mentioned earlier, CNAME records link one domain to another. When Twilio SendGrid gives you CNAME records during domain authentication, they point to a domain Twilio SendGrid controls. Okay, this means that Twilio SendGrid, so SendGrid got bought by Twilio, and now they've updated all their documentation to be really verbose by including Twilio with everything. I'm just going to say SendGrid when I see that. This means that SendGrid can create and update your SPF and DKIM records for you. Oh, that's interesting. For example, if you purchase a dedicated IP address, Twilio can add that address to your SPF automatically, blah, blah, blah. The CNAME record also allows SendGrid to route our click and open tracking statistics back to your account when you use them to adjust more sending behavior. All right. So cool. The MX record looks like we maybe don't need to set that up because we're not going to turn off this security feature. Unless, shoot. I don't know if the security feature is on or off right now because remember, this is linked to another account. So it's possible that this is off and that we have to go through this path because I got to make sure that this continues to work for School Desk. Okay. Or it might be a feature that didn't exist when I created the School Desk version. And because I feel like I remember doing more of this MX and TXT stuff. All right. So let's now completeness. I'm getting a little worn out, but I'll keep going because we're almost at the end. We're almost at the actual configuration options. So MX records specify the location of the server responsible for handling inbound email for a domain. Okay, so that's still going to be SendGrid. There's going to be handling the inbound. Return path is an email header and defines an address that is separate from your original sending address. Okay. And then TXT records again are these are just bits of text that you can associate with a domain that people can like look up stuff for verification purposes and other things. Both DKIM and SPF are implemented with TXT. Automated security. With automated security turned off, SendGrid will provide these TXT. Okay. When automated security is turned off, you must update TXT record, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I don't think we need to mess with... My takeaway from this is that hopefully automated security is on. Just go verify that. And if it's on, then all we should have to do is create this CNAME record. That's how I'm reading this. Let's read on. If you choose to brand links, well, I don't know what that means. What the heck what is link branding? So deep. Email link branding allows all of the click-tracked links and open-tracked images in your emails to be from your domain instead of SendGrid. Okay, well, I'm not doing click tracking, so I'm not really worried about that. So let's assume we don't need that. All right. Each user may have a maximum of 3,000 authenticated domains. Okay, this will be like number 2 for me, so I'm not really concerned about that comment. Before you begin to set up domain authentication, you must submit the DNS records provided by SendGrid to your DNS or hosting provider. Blah, blah, blah. Determine your hosting provider is and make sure you have access required to change them. If you don't, so I know I have access because I know I have a Cloudflare account. Okay. If you already have a DNS record with a custom name on your domain, adding a new record with a matching custom domain will overwrite your existing DNS record. Okay. This can happen if you use a custom return path. And so, I don't think we're doing this, but can read on. For example, let's assume you have a TXT record with the host email.example.com. If you set a custom return path of email during domain authentication, Twilio SendGrid will create a record with the host email.example.com. When you complete automatic domain authentication, your existing TXT record will be replaced with this record. This will likely break one of your existing services. So I need to be really careful because I don't want to break anything, but it's a different domain. Like, in fact, my other domain name is at a completely different provider. So we're not, I don't think we're going to mess, I don't think we'll affect that in the process. Although I may need to go check and verify after the stream is over. All right. SendGrid supports Domain Connect, which can simplify this process. If we have partnered with your DNS provider, which they probably have because they mentioned Cloudflare by name. Oh, they've only done it for GoDaddy. Okay, so never mind. That's interesting that they've only done it for one. So let's continue on. That path is not going to work for us. Maybe it's something new and they're working with other partners to get more people online. Okay, in my user interface, I can go to Settings, Sender Authentication. All right, I'm going to head over there, but again, I'm going to have to like toggle back and forth between my secrets setting because I'm not sure what's going to be present or not. So this is going to be a little annoying. Sorry. All right, Settings, Sender Authentication. So I'll be right back, assuming this is all okay. I'm clicking Settings and then Sender Authentication. Okay. So, oh, okay, I did. I don't think anything is, since these are just domain names, which I'm sure anybody could discover. So let's bring the scene back. You can see everything. So here's that page. And you can see I've already, this is the school desk. So it's at theschooldesc.app. And I've done both link branding and this. And I would imagine this verify an address thing, that's probably for that other single sender verification stuff. So we want to go here, and then in the section that says click Get Started, the Authenticate Your Domain page will load. Okay, there's no Get Started because I must have done this once before, so it's like thinking it's something different, but it's probably this button. Authenticate Your Domain. Okay, so again, I don't know where these things are going to go, so I'm going to click this just in case anything sensitive pops up. I'm clicking the Authenticate Your Domain button. Okay, that seems safe. To make this easier, please answer the following questions. Your DNS host is often, but okay, I don't, let's see, Cloudflare. Would you like to brand the links for this domain? No. My emails are going to be a prompt that says reply to this thing. There's not going to be any links to put in there. So I don't think I need to do that. All right. Clicking. I'm not, one of these is going to burn me if I don't do this. I'm going to keep continuing this way. All right, so I've clicked next, and there's nothing hiding here. Enter your domain and edit any additional settings. So we want to say journeyinbox.com. Right, that is the domain I bought. Yep. Readme. Yeah, journeyinbox.com. Okay. So domain authentication removes via SendGrid.net. So whatever we end up having in our from field will look like this, which is what we want. Advanced settings. Ah, here we go. use automated security. That's the thing. That's what they were talking about. When enabled, we automatically rotate. Oh, that's good. So this is the notion of key rotation. If you didn't have automatic key rotation, then it means that you'll store some kind of sensitive key, which is important for making all the security work. But over time, if anybody ever hacked that, or in using some method, and didn't have key rotation, then they would just permanently have access to your account and could do whatever sort of spam sending or something. So by having key rotation and having SendGrid handle that for us, that means that on SendGrid's own cadence, they're going to say, here's a new key to do all this work. So if anybody ever hacked your account, it'd be at least be a limited time before SendGrid could rotate the key and put in something new. All right, so that's cool. Use a custom return path. Override the return path we create that tells mailbox providers where to find your SPF and DKIM records. I don't think I want to do that. I don't think we need to override anything. If the SDKM selector is already in use by another service, you can, okay, I don't think there's anything here. So I'm gonna go back to secrets and then we will click the next button. Marky, let me read your question here. So I'm gonna click the next button, let that go. Thought I clicked it, okay. So we've got some stuff here, which I need to decide if I'm going to verify. Let me read the question. Is SendGrid for emails for a domain you have? Yes, it will be. So it will, SendGrid is the thing that will send out emails and then process inbound emails, and it will look like it came from my domain. So they're called an email service provider. I explained this earlier in the stream, but you weren't on the time, it's okay. So they're a service that's specifically designed to handle email. All right, so the thing I want to do now is decide if I can show you these values. I think they're all going to be okay because you could get this information via, maybe I should show this. I'm going to go off this tab for a second, come back here, and see if I can demonstrate some stuff. So let's do, there's a command, it's called dig. And dig is a command that is all about working with DNS. It's a DNS lookup utility. So you should be able to, the way dig works is you can provide a domain name and it will give you, like I told you, domain names are kind of this public thing. Like if the domain name exists on the internet, it's because you've made it accessible to the domain name servers. And that's how somebody would get to your website. That's how a browser knows how, is it like talks to the domain name servers, looks up the name, and then finds it. So dig is like a command line utility that does kind of the same sort of functionality that your web browser does and gets information. Well, not necessarily your web browser, but the things that your web browser talks to. So we should be able to type dig along with a domain. In this case, I want to do, let's see, www.theschooldesc.app. And here we go. We get questions, or we get, so they phrase it in terms of questions and answers. That's a little strange, or kind of commands, but here's the answer section. So I told you that there are different kinds of records that are in DNS, and one of them is called a CNAME, one of them is called an A record, and they have different purposes. So what this is saying right now, the way to read this is like we looked up the domain name for SchoolDesk, my other service, and the configuration of what is public came back with this answer of the school desk has a CNAME record. The CNAME record has a value of transparent dinosaur 0x blah 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 HerokuDNS.com. And then following that, it says transparent dinosaur blah 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 is associated with these 4 different IP addresses. So this is how your browser would connect to this information. A CNAME is kind of a, I don't know if it stands for alias or, let's actually go look. What does DNS CNAME mean? I'm sure, canonical name. So you can see here, it maps one domain name, an alias, to another. So technically, I guess the way to read this is my www.schooldesk.app is the alias. Well, which one's the canonical? I would think that, is the value the canonical? Or is the value the alias? One can, for example, use CNAME records to point ftp.example.com and www.example.com to the DNS entry for example.com, which in turn has an A record. Okay, so the fact that this longer name is the thing that has an A record, and A record is what maps to the actual IP address, would tell me that www.theschooldesk.app is an alias that we've pointed to transparent dinosaur. So it's kind of like it's a one-step hop to get to the actual IP address. So I wanted to look this up, and I wanted to do this dig because I was about to show you some configuration from SendGrid for some CNAMEs, and I want to make sure that they're all safe to show publicly on the stream. But just by showing you dig, I've proven to you that CNAME records are publicly available information. And we haven't configured ours yet with our actual domain, but this is what we're trying to do this domain authentication. Let's go back to this tab, and now you'll see what I was talking about. So we've got manual setup, and so what it's saying is add all of these records to Cloudflare's DNS section. So what they want to do is say we need a CNAME record with, this is going to be the subdomain. So they want us to create a subdomain of EM733, and then this is the value that they put on that. And same thing for these other things. Let's see if we can do automatic setup, because that would be cool and save us time. There is an automatic setup option that will allow you to log into your DNS and install DNS records. As of right now, this only works for GoDaddy. Okay, we've got to do this ourselves. So let me log into Cloudflare, get to the right place, and yeah, do that portion too. So again, I got to go back to secrets mode. Sorry, y'all, a lot of secrets time. We're not always messing with configuration. I promise. Most of the time, we're staring at code, but not so much today. But this is the reality of getting services set up. Sometimes you're just dealing with configuration fiddly bits. So I'm currently loading my Cloudflare dashboard, and Cloudflare unfortunately is putting my email address as my username like right prominently in the corner. So that's kind of obnoxious, which means I can't really like share this right away. So what I'm going to do is describe this as best I can, because I can't just show my email address. So on the sidebar, there's a thing that says domain registration. And when I expand that, it's got 3 options. One of them is manage domains. I'm going to go to manage domains. Marky, I will get to your question in just a moment. I see it there. I'm not missing it. So I'm on the manage domains page now for my account, and it's listing Journey Inbox as one of my domains. And there's a manage button. I'm going to go click the manage button. among that, there's 3 tabs. It's showing me how much it costs and all of this stuff, which is definitely like not information that I need to share. It's got contact information, which shows way more personal information than I would want to share on the internet, so I definitely can't show that. And there's a configuration tab, which is showing some other options. So I don't think I'm in the right place. But when I look at the side, it says there's a quick action section that says update DNS configuration. I'm going to click that button. Okay. So now I'm in a new section. And at this point, is there anything I am worried about sharing? Doesn't show my email address anymore. Okay, I think I'm good. I think I can also, Marky, I think I can also answer your question. So here we are looking at the records configuration. As again, all these A, CNAME, TXT, they're all kinds of records with DNS. So Marky, you're asking if I use a CNAME record when someone uses my domain in a browser, my domain points to your website. So yes, you could. Let's say you have registered. I'm just going to use a very boring name that you can't, I'm sure, register, but let's imagine that you were able to register example.com. And let's say you wanted to point to my personal website. So that's mattlehman.com. You could set up in your DNS provider, you could set up a CNAME record that says at a subdomain like mat.example.com. That's the one part of the CNAME. And then the value would be mattlehman.com. And so now, once that is established, assuming you actually own example.com and all of its subdomains, and you've saved that, now if somebody visits mat.example.com, the DNS system will say, okay, that's a CNAME. Let me look at what it's connected to. Oh, it's connected to mattlehman.com. Let me look at the information for mattlehman.com. Oh, that's connected to this IP address. Therefore, mat.example.com connects to this IP address, and it wires them up that way and gets you in your browser. Hopefully that made sense. Okay. Now, time for us to add some records. We have, you can see, because I have not even set up this site yet, I have no particular records on this. So we need to add, and I'm sure they will show right here after we're done, we're going to add a record. Say add record, and this is where let's bring the tabs a little closer together so we can click back and forth quickly. So you can see we're going to add a CNAME record. We'll say, and here's where you can show there's a bunch of them. Like, I don't know what 90% of these do, but I know the ones that are important for this context. Oh, good. Glad you have something fun to play with, Marky. So we have a CNAME record, and we want to take the value provided, that's the name, copy that, and we'll come over to, oops. Oh, come on. How do I go? Why am my brain is not remembering the shortcut for tabbing through tabs. What's going on? Don't you hate that when that happens? Isn't it Control Alt and then bracket? Come on, brain. You can do it. Nope. All right. Oh, that's going to bug me. Yeah, there's Control Tab that cycles through them, but there's a way to like go back and forth, which I use all the time, and my brain is like not remembering what's going on. Firefox, shortcut, tab, left. Oh, page up, page down. What? Move tab in focus left. Control. No, that's not the only one. Man, and it's also could be, this is not my standard keyboard. Like I bet if I was upstairs in I have a Kinesis 2 keyboard that I normally use, and like, it's funny. It's literally finger memory. I can't do it right now. This is bizarre. Oh gosh, we are going to figure this out because I'm bothered. All right, Firefox shortcut, tab left. To do this, move tab in focus left. Control plus arrow. That's not right. I'm doing that. Control arrow. That's not working. Control shift page up and page down. That's not working either. Oh, that's moving. Oh, I see what it's doing. So control shift page up moves the tab position. No, that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to move the focus. I want to move. So I want to switch tab. Firefox shortcut. So switch tab. So there's Marky, there's your suggestion. Control tab, that's to cycle through them. Control shift page up. No, that's that same one. Control shift. I swear it has to do with the brackets. This is garbage. There's no. Why am I not remembering that? Yeah, I can do control. That is another way. You can control tab and control shift tab. But there's a specific way. Like most of the time in my head, I'm not thinking like, do I want to go forward or backwards? I'm thinking, do I want to go left or right? And there's one that goes left and there's one that goes right. And I thought it had to do with square brackets. Okay, go one tab, command option. This is the one. Command option left. There it is. Okay, that's the one I used. Why did I blank out on that? Or why did I think it was brackets? Hold on. All right, whatever. It's useful. So we have our value here. Sorry, I got it so sidetracked there. We've got the value that we put here. So then we can, or that was the name, excuse me. And then we can take the value. And you can see all of these are mapping one domain to another. So these all mean something to SendGrid. And we'll paste that. And look, oh, cool. It tells you exactly what the CNAME record is doing in a text way. em733journeyinbox.com is an alias of blah, 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 u19 blah, all SendGrid.net. And has its traffic proxied through. Well, I don't know about that part, but I don't know what it. I would assume that we want Cloudflare to do their Cloudflare thing. So let's do that and save it. This record type cannot be proxied. Okay, then let's not do that. Turn that off. And we want to set the TTL to auto. TTL stands for time to live. And essentially it's an indication to servers of how long they should consider a value valid. So if they've looked up, imagine a DNS server has looked up em733 journeyinbox.com, and they got this CNAME record by looking up Journey Inbox. Rather than coming back to Cloudflare, they can cache it. They can remember this information. And the TTL tells them, how long should you be allowed to cache that? So naturally, the longer you allow it, the easier, the less burden that would put on a server that is serving up that data, which could be a lot, like if you're getting a lot of traffic. But we don't want to put this to 1 day and then lock that in and then need to change it, because then it means that anybody that's actually fetched that value will hold on to that value for a day, because that's what you told them. I'm going to leave it at auto and just trust that Cloudflare is doing their proper thing here. So let's save this, and we should now see, okay, it's DNS only, and we know that CNAME is there. Now, notice that it dropped all of the journeyinbox.com stuff. So it knows that it's a CNAME. It's probably a shorthand for showing that it's going for a specific subdomain. Everything in front of journeyinbox.com. All right, let's add another record. And we want another CNAME record. And we probably could have done this all at once, but that's okay. This time we want to go and grab this other one, this S1 domain key thing. Let's go back this way, paste it here, and then we want the value over here. Again, all of this information is going to be public if somebody does a dig on this, so I'm not worried about sharing this information. And we're going to turn off proxy because they just told us that it doesn't work for CNAME record types. Okay, so now we've got that. And then let's add one more. That's going to be a third CNAME for that S2 thing. And we're going to paste in the value as the name. Come over here, get the other string, and there's the value side, and turn off proxy. And save. So we've now got the 3 things that SendGrid told us to put in. We can return to SendGrid. All right. Once added, press verify. So I'm going to do that. I've added these records. We're going to verify. It worked. Awesome. One more time. I don't know if there's anything secret on that page. Let's return to sender authentication. See what it says. It all looks good, so let's bring this back. Okay, so now we have em733 journeyinbox.com. There must be some scheme where they're trying to reduce. This is probably some kind of security protection by having this random number here, because clearly I've got another random number here. Who knows what they're using it for, but I don't really care. It's just the values that they need for their purposes. Yeah, Marky, the only reason I understand this stuff is because I've been doing this for a long time. I've been a software developer for many, many, many years, and it's just an accumulation of knowledge from banging my head against these kind of things in the past. So if this is new to you, don't worry. Like, it's new to everybody at some point. So I think what this means now that we have authenticated domains, it means that we should be able to send, but I have to send it from my actual journeyinbox.com. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to hide this again because I've got my env file. So we're going to come over here. I'm going to go to the secrets, and what I'm going to change, I'll talk through it. Whoops. Yeah, email is totally the worst, Jeffrey. It's very fiddly. But once you get it going, you rarely have to think about it. So I had configured a setting called email SendGrid reply to, and in my env file, which is the settings for my local stuff right now, it's set to reply-to@fakesendgrid.com. So I'm going to copy that line, I'm going to comment it out, and then I'm going to change this to stream test at journeyinbox.com. Now, because I verified that sender, and we've gone through that verification process, presumably, once we do this API call, that should work. So let me get off this file so I can show my screen again. Oh, that's awesome, Marky. Just coding for a year. And are you in a boot camp or something? You say we start the web services next week. That sounds like somebody who's maybe doing a program, which is awesome. Good for you. So this is the thing that I changed. Now I can't show you the actual EMV file because I've got my API key over there. But we changed this value to something that uses journeyinbox.com. Now, if we're finally in a position to test this out. So we're going to run the same run jobs daily command that we ran earlier. And with any luck, we won't get this verified sender identity problem because we've verified the entire domain at this point, and we've set everything up so SendGrid trusts the fact that we are sending from here. So let's go and run up to the daily command again and see how it goes. It ran without issue, so that's exciting. I'm going to check my email right now, doing it live. And whoa, that's so cool. It says, I don't know how well you can all see that. There it is. It's kind of blurry. Sorry. This camera has a fixed focal length, and if I have it back here, you can't tell. But it reads stream test at journeyinbox.com, and Gmail doesn't give me any scary warnings to say like we don't trust this. And it's got, I can't show my actual email, but when I expand the details, it says standard encryption, so it's doing that right. And then it says, how are you? Reply to this prompt to update your journal. And then it says, on your journey on Thursday, June 22nd, 2022. Oh, interesting. We've got a bug in, okay. I'm going to type this out because I can't, it's on my email. So let's type out what I'm seeing. I'm just going to drop it right here because it doesn't matter. So, because we'll delete this. It literally says this text, on your journey on Thursday. So there's already like a interesting time issue here. June, which we abbreviated, and that's cool. 2023. All of that is fine, assuming once we correct for the time zone stuff. Yeah, the local date, that's curious. It must be, so it's 10:40 here, and it must be thinking it's UTC, which is like 5 or 6 hours ahead of me. I can never remember what my offset is from UTC. I'm on the east coast of the United States, I can tell you that much. But here is where the problem is. And then in parentheses, it says June 22, 2023. So that, and then finally it has you wrote, and then the rest of it is my test entry that I have, which just literally says, hello world. How fitting, right? So, Okay, Thursday, June 22nd. Is that right? Check the calendar. Ah, it would be right, but it's at the so I must have streamed on June 22nd. Or no. I streamed this project and I put in an early entry on, so I stream on Wednesdays, so this would have been on the 21st. But again, all of my app is storing this stuff as UTC. So it recorded that time as the 22nd. So that's an interesting aspect of this, as we're gonna have to think about that, and maybe account for a user. Oh man, that's really an interesting bug to think through. If no, it'll be okay because we put that entry in manually, and if we think about this, the flow is going to be, we have a webhook that's receiving emails, and I'll be able to use the timestamp from when the person hit the send button, or even better, we'll be able to use message IDs to trace through. We intended a prompt that was sent out for today as this certain message ID that gets connected to the SendGrid email, and that gets sent out. And when they finally respond to that email, that message ID comes back. We can look it up and associate it with that proper day. So I think I shouldn't worry too much about the fact that the time is off of when I sent it. I do want us to look into, like, what the heck did I do wrong with this stuff in parentheses? That's definitely not right. So I messed something up there. And it's saying it's Thursday, August 24th when I send this. But if I'm sending this early in the morning and factoring in time zones or something, I don't know. We can make this work when we send it too. So that part, it feels okay. All in all, I feel like it's pretty successful. So good news. Well, thanks for the encouragement, guys. It's nice to see something work. We think code in South Africa. That does sound super cool. Is that a boot camp? We think code South Africa. We think code. Is it in Cape Town or Johannesburg? I don't apologize. I don't know my South African geography. So let's zoom out. We think code. Oh, very cool. Well, cool. Welcome. Welcome. It's interesting to have people from all over the world on these streams sometimes. All right. So I'm going to be careful. I realized I closed the tab and didn't realize it would dump me back here. Thankfully, there's nothing hiding here. So I'm going to close my Cloudflare tab without opening it because I don't remember what's showing there. And I'm going to close the SendGrid tab. Okay, you got multiple campuses. Well, I wish you luck on your journey to learning into becoming a developer. It's pretty fun stuff. I like it. I've been going for a while, so I'm coming up on 2 hours here. I think I was a little ambitious on how far I thought we'd get, but we did do some very critical configuration of the DNS stuff. But I think where I want to leave this probably is see if we can debug what happened here. Like, why did this show up as June 22? And maybe what did I intend to show? Like, that's certainly not right. So what was that supposed to be is the big question. Now, the hello world, the actual prompt itself, that's right. I just expected the raw text. There's nothing exciting there. That's all good. It's purely this part. So let's go to our template. So we've got the template that has our actual prompt. And we have, I'm glad there was an entry too, because we wouldn't have seen this. So we did entry when natural day. And it gave a date like that? What? Entry when natural day. Well, what I might do with this, if I can't get this quickly this evening, is we'll record this as a bug. And this is actually not, it's not a blocking bug that would block me from deploying. Because as a reminder, what I'm trying to do is get to a point where I myself, as someone who uses a journaling service that's done over email, I want to be able to replace I want to be able to replace the service I'm using, and then like start like regularly journaling on this service and hammering out the bugs, building up the user interface, building all the parts that will eventually enable someone like yourself, any of you, to join in as well. But if I can get in early, that gives me an opportunity to get some learning and fix some bugs. So my goal is not to get this perfect, but to get it usable enough for me, even if it's got some warts on it. Jeffrey B, is humanized third party? It is, but I thought we loaded that. Or it's kind of third party. Let's bring up the settings. So it's humanize is not loaded by default, but it does come with Django. It's a Django contrib humanize. And I know that this much would have loaded, like if humanize wasn't, if the installed app wasn't on this list, humanize here would have failed. It would have said, I don't know what template tags you're talking about. So that would have prevented Natural Day from running, I think, because I think Natural Day is coming from humanize. So the question is, why did humanize return this as Natural Day? Did I misunderstand what Natural Day was supposed to be? Did I type it incorrectly? There's a couple things that we can verify, because it could be, the other thing about it is it could be if this was a filter and the filter is unknown, then Django might have just swallowed that error and just printed out the best it could. So we should check on that piece, and we'll do that. Spend a couple minutes here trying that, and once that's done, we'll either file a bug if we can't fix it quickly, or fix it and call it a night, or a day for some of you. Where am I going? We want to go to the Django project website. And then we'll go to documentation. We'll search for humanize. 0 results. Baloney. Baloney. Maybe I messed something up. Okay. Template tags. What? What's going on? This should return something. Template. How do you return 0 results for template? Okay. What's going on here, Django? The search not working? Yeah, that's not right. All right. You know who's pretty good at searching though? Google. Let's see if we can get to the Django humanized docs via Google. There it is. All right. So we added contrib humanize to our installed apps. You saw that. And you saw me use the load humanize thing. And then we tried to use Natural Day, which I thought it was a filter. Is it not a filter? I guess it could be a function. In which case I just messed it up. AP number, int, comma, int word, Natural Day. But they don't tell you if it's a filter or not. That's annoying. Oh, they do. I'm just not reading. You'll have access to the following filters. So filters are when you have like variable and the pipe character and then the thing after it. And we should be able to test this out. All right, let's do this we're going to play with this. I'm going to go back and turn off all this SendGrid stuff. So I'm going to have to turn on the secrets for a moment so I can switch some things in the env file. And what I'm doing now is going to my env file and I'm coming back into this thing and changing. I'm turning off the SendGrid API key. By turning it off, I mean I'm commenting it out and uncommenting out fake one. Same thing with the reply to, and then same thing with the email backend. So now we're back to the console backend. Closing that env file so I can bring this back up. Okay. So we've got, there's one more thing I'm gonna have to change. And that's that I need to take my personal email out of the account that's sending this. Otherwise, you're gonna see printed to my console my personal email. So, sorry, one more second. So I'm going to the test users. Whoops, I don't have that server running. I'm going to start up the web server. And going back to the users section. And I'll put it back to, what was it before? Matt@testing.com, I think. Doesn't really matter, but something that's not my personal email address. Okay, we are back to this. So we're back into position where everything is hidden. We need this code to run. I didn't save this, that's why it didn't break. But I think what we can do now is we're now in a cycle where I can call that daily job command, and it should, with any luck, print out the command, and we can kind of keep running that each time and play around with the template rendering and figure out what's going on. And because I think there's only the one entry in there, maybe not, but so let's run that. And there it is. There's the same problem. So this is nice. We don't have to go through that whole cycle of actually sending a real email to replicate the problem. This is the benefit of having this console mode. So natural day is not producing the result we want. Why? Let's go read about it and make sure well, first let's make sure I typed it properly. We go to the template. That looks correct. And in fact, if I take out, let's drop the N and see if it might blow up if we do that, which would be good. It would be really good. It would basically prove like Django is going to be a little bit pickier. Okay. So that tells me that it actually did call natural day. And I think what I was going for here, or what I was hoping to see, was stuff like 1 day ago, or, you know, a few days ago. Oh, okay. Boo. All right. Answered my question. So let's fix that first. So I misunderstood what natural day does. It looks like natural day is only useful for yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Anything outside of that, and it says it right in the documentation, is going to use the date format. So the date format then corresponds to what we saw in the output, which was June 22, 2023. That's the date format for dates here in the United States. So, not the behavior I was looking for. I was really looking for, in this case, we're in August, so I was hoping that it would say, on your journey on Thursday, June 22, 2023, 2 months ago, you wrote. That's what I was really hoping for. Doesn't seem like it's that smart. So maybe Django humanize alternatives. Okay, I don't think we're going to find this quickly. So what I'm going to do is record this as an issue that we can fix later. Because it would be really nice. Like one of the features that I have liked about this service that I've used is that their prompt does include, like, here's the date, and here is how long ago it was. Time since? Is that an obvious one that I'm missing? Time. Where is that a standard template tag, Jeffrey? Let me go back to the template tags. Oh, well, maybe I don't even need fanciness then. Oh, well, would you look at that? Formats a date as the time since the date, that date. Takes an optional argument that is a variable containing the date. Okay, so we would need to pass in a little bit of context. All right, let's try that. Thanks for the suggestion. So what do we need to do to make that work? In order to do that, we need to pass in today as part of the context, I think. So let's close this for the moment, and let's go ahead and delete this. You all have seen the problem that we saw, so we don't need to have that line anymore. And if we now come into here, and let's ditch humanize. This is the only thing we were using humanize for, right? So we can probably clear out humanize too in the process. Get rid of humanize, and that's going to make that fail. Yep, invalid filter natural day. So we have confidence that it was from humanize. But what we want to do is we want to pass in today as the local date. So let's come in over here and add to the context. We'll call it today and give it the variable. So we've got that now. And now we can come over here and we can change natural day to time since, oops, gotta spell it right, colon, and now we should have today in the context. If we do that, awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate that. You saved me looking for this later. And it gives me, what I expected. In fact, it gives me exactly what I expected. 2 months. Be interesting. We could probably fiddle with the entry. Let's fiddle with the entry a little bit, just to see how it runs with some other stuff. So I'm going to come over here. We'll go to projects journal. We'll fire up the web server on this side. Oops. Fire up the web server on this side so that we can kind of run the job command over and over again and see the output while also fiddling with this thing. And we can come to the entries. There's just the one. So we're going to edit it manually. Let's change it to yesterday. So let's switch it to 8. So save and continue editing. And now if we do our job command, we should hopefully see like 1 day or 2 days ago. Okay, close enough. there's probably like some calculation in there that's off because it's, well, okay, remember it's UTC from the point of view. So when they're calculating today, it's actually the 24th from UTC's perspective. So okay, I'm just to satisfy my curiosity. What does like a week ago look like, or 10 days ago? Is it going to do 10 days, or is it going to do 2 weeks or something? So save and continue editing. Run it again. Okay, 1 week, 5 days. So that's pretty cool. I mean, I think it would be nicer to start. When does it start going to months? Like, I mean, at some point, I don't really care about 1 week, 5 days. Like, that's overkill to me. Like, what is it? There's got to be an inflection point where it stops losing that precision, right? 3 weeks, 1 day ago. Maybe it just stays exact the whole time, which is not exactly what I want, but well, no, because it lost it at 2 months. Or is it going to do two? Because is it going to do like 2 months, 1 week, 1 day ago? That would not be cool. How about let's try 720? Okay, so maybe once it gets over a month, it's like, okay, you're at that point you don't care about precision. So I'm cool with that. Marky, I'm looking at your comment, your question. Do you suggest VM if you have a make file in the project? I don't quite see the connection. I basically always use VN. So to me, your question is like, they're two separate related subjects. Like I have a make file. Make file has my targets. So I guess I could see what you're saying if, and maybe do you code your VN or your make file to use paths that are within the virtual environment, like down to VN bin whatever? I don't. I activate my virtual environment. So not sure if that's what you're asking or not. So it isn't. I don't know, Jeffrey. I think you would be right. I think I'm satisfied with the behavior here. Like I don't know that I need it to be. If it splits it to week and day, that's fine. You know, and I doubt that, honestly, that's a personal taste. So I'm gonna guess that even if I had came in and recommended and said like, hey, I want to change this default, this template tag that's probably been around since, I don't know, you could look it up in the Git log history to find how old it is, but it's probably been around for a decade, I would guess. And say I want to change the format. People are going to view that as like almost a compatibility breaking change, perhaps, and may reject it. John, welcome. Thanks for joining, even though you're very late. That's okay. I'll have the recording up after you're done. What we did this evening, and I'm wrapping up now. I was fixing a bug here, but the short version is we got the email working. I sent it, and I saw it come through in my email client. And in order to do that, we went through a lot of configuration work this evening, configuring SendGrid, doing domain authentication, learning all about DNS for folks that didn't know, and configuring the right CNAME records into the Cloudflare account where my DNS is. Oh, I see. So, Marky, you're saying you use make files for pipelines, like a fresh install. Okay. When I'm doing virtual environments, I don't know that I don't use make files for those kind of purposes. I can show you what my make file is. It's not very big. It's like, I usually think of it as like my command palette of these are things that I just find like the things that I would type out regularly that I don't want to have to remember. And there's conveniences. So because you can see there's a bunch of flags on them and they're shorthand for that. In my README, did I include it? I talk about doing a little bit of local development of what you have to install. this was really just if you wanted to follow along at home and kind of get going with me. Maybe there's an argument to say make a bootstrap target, which could do all of this stuff. I don't know. I could do that, but I haven't done that because I'll never remember all my finger memory. I know if I had a fresh clone from GitHub, my finger memory would immediately type this line. Whoops, not that line. The README. My finger memory would type this like instantaneously for any Python project. I know I'm going to need a virtual environment, so I'd type that out, and then I'd follow this to do the pip install of all the right packages. So that's my thought on that. And Jeffrey, you never got into containers. I'm in agreement with you. Like, containers can be really useful, especially like at work. We do containers because we have a gigantic cluster. So we use Kubernetes, and the way that we deploy software in a large system, where I do for my day job, using local virtual environments is a process that would lead to certain scalability issues and challenges there. So containers are really helpful. There is a point and an inflection point in many projects where containers become useful. And my take on it is like when you need certain compiled packages that are not easy to get access to on your particular operating system. So last week we talked about setting up Postgres, and Postgres, the driver psychopg, now has a binary format that or a binary version of the package that works for Mac, and with any luck, once we deploy, it will also work for the Heroku site. And if we can get away with that, that's amazing. But if we couldn't, and I was testing with Postgres locally, then I might want to put this stuff into a container so that I could get the guarantees of having consistencies with the certain C libraries that would be required. And I know that's pretty deep down the rabbit hole. We don't need to go into that. And you can see already a little bit. I'm right at the edge of that with GraphLib, which is why we have the C flag stuff and this LD flags. And that's just so that I can do some stuff with GraphViz, which is kind of a pain, but it is a pain that I'm willing to endure a little bit of so that I don't have to deal with the pain of containers. Because as soon as you step into the containers world, I mean, it's powerful, but it comes with a lot of overhead. All right, so I think I'm going to wrap it there. Thank you all for joining in. Hopefully you learned something about DNS. Hopefully you learned something about email. And you saw how all this stuff is wired together. We're a little bit closer to getting this ready to deploy. So let's go back to our launch list briefly and look at our SendGrid configuration. Oh, Marky, you're welcome. Thanks for joining in. So we did verify with the sample email. We got it. We did an end-to-end test, which is awesome. And I think that we will call that complete for this issue. So that gets our launch list down to doing the inbound stuff. And that should be fun. If you would do me a favor and leave a thumbs up on the video, or a comment later on if you have questions, that helps me and helps other people discover the content. So that would be much appreciated. And I will check y'all next week. Take care.